Welcome back to Film Infection, hope you're having a great day. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker and Spider-Man No Way Home both attempt to bring back old characters from previous franchises, but only one of these movies succeeds at making us feel nostalgic and reinvested in the character, and the other, well, let's just say it felt like a complete betrayal of Luke Skywalker.
You don't need Luke Skywalker.
So in this video, I'm going to explain how when you bring back old heroes and old villains, there's a very specific way that it needs to be done so that it doesn't feel like you're betraying a once beloved character. So here we go. When it comes to bringing back old heroes, there's a very specific way that you need to do it, okay? And I think Spider-Man No Way Home perfectly exemplifies how to do it well, and The Last Jedi perfectly exemplifies how not to do it, okay? And it makes one major error. It has too much character development for Luke Skywalker happen off screen. The Last Jedi does not know how to play the nostalgia card correctly. Nostalgia should be used to make the audience want to reconnect with the character that they knew from a previous franchise so that the people making the new movie do not have to set up that character again. They can just use the previous character work from the previous franchise as a jumping off point for the new character development that they want to do with that old character in the new franchise. But The Last Jedi has Luke turn into some grumpy old grouch and hide away in the most unfindable place in the galaxy without explaining why his character chooses to do this or what drives him to want to do this, right? They just say, oh, things got so bad with Ben Solo turning to the dark side, I just got so depressed. But it never shows that happening on screen, so we don't buy it. All we see is our beloved character being betrayed. We're seeing him act in a way that we don't recognize. In the original trilogy, he's bright, he's hopeful, he's optimistic, he's inspired, right? He's inspired to go out and do good. But in The Last Jedi and in this whole sequel trilogy, he's not, and he's acting in a way that we don't recognize, so it feels like a complete betrayal of the character on Disney's part. But it didn't have to be. There could have been a convincing character arc where Luke does sort of go down this rabbit hole of darkness and he goes and hides away because he feels like a failure for training someone who later turned to the dark side. But that all happens off screen. You can't just tell us something happened and expect us to be emotionally connected to it. We need to see the story play out in front of our eyes. We need to see characters' reactions to certain events, and we need to see all of their adventures culminate in their final emotional state of being. But that doesn't happen with Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy. We just see him at the point after he's gone through this emotional journey. Contrast that to Spider-Man No Way Home with Tobey and Andrew, where they are very clearly established as the same characters as they were in their movies. So Spider-Man No Way Home doesn't have to set them up as characters because we already know them from their previous franchises. I especially want to focus on Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in this movie because I think Tobey Maguire sort of nicely finished his Peter Parker's character arc in his trilogy, but Andrew Garfield really needed some redemption. And this movie does a great job at improving an old character who previously wasn't that very well portrayed in his movies. Contrast that to The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, where they managed to worsen a character by bringing him back. And that's because Spider-Man No Way Home picks up with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man at the same place that we left him off. Therefore, he still feels like the same person, and he can grow and he can change in this movie without it feeling like his character is being betrayed because they've already set up that he is the same person that we left him off as in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Another thing No Way Home does right that the Star Wars sequels do not is that No Way Home doesn't regress any previous character growth, okay? In all of the previous movies to these sequels, characters have grown, they become more mature, they become better people. And that was the case with Han Solo. In the original trilogy, he learned not to just care about himself and money and what he could do to make himself more money, right? Like that's who he was at the beginning of A New Hope, but then throughout the trilogy he learns to become more selfless, and then in the end he ends up saving the rebellion. But The Force Awakens decides to take all that character growth, all that beautiful character work that George Lucas and the team working on the original Star Wars movie did, and they decided to just revert him back to a rogue who only cares about himself, has a ship, is divorced from Leia, and he just got depressed because his son turned to the dark side. And I understand, but they just completely pissed all all over all the previous character work, and that is not something you want to do. So overall, the lesson here is that you don't want to change characters off screen from the previous time you knew them to where you're introducing them now. You don't want to change anything between then, because then we won't be as invested in where they are now or in the journey that they are going on. And also, don't regress any previous character growth. When it comes to bringing back old villains, it's good to have a solid-ish explanation for why they're back, right? That's something that the Rise of Skywalker has no interest in doing.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Anyways, it has to make some sense, something I think Spider-Man No Way Home does a pretty good job at, right? It introduces the multiverse, it introduces way more old characters, but yet makes us feel way more for all of these old villains than just the one that Star Wars introduces. You'd think that since Star Wars is only introducing one villain and we've spent so many other movies with him, that we'd feel a lot more for him than the several villains that Spider-Man No Way Home introduces, but yet the opposite is true. We feel for these old villains. Even if we don't agree with them, we can still understand their motivations a lot more than we can Palpatine's. And I know that in Star Wars, the villains' motivations are supposed to be more simplistic and stuff, and I'm okay with that. In fact, I like that more in Star Wars, because then we can focus more on the hero as a complicated person. But I really don't understand Palpatine's motivation in The Rise of Skywalker. It's very convoluted and doesn't make any sense to me. But another thing when it comes to bringing back Palpatine, which is probably the worst sin that this movie commits, is that we don't have a connection between Rey and Palpatine. We have a pretty good connection between Kylo Ren and Rey, right, with their Force Skype type thing where they can talk to each other, and now in this movie they can physically touch each other through that Force connection. But due to the fact that Palpatine just comes out of nowhere, and we don't have any of the old characters who have had previous interactions with Palpatine to tell Rey, oh my god, like, this guy is scary. We sort of get that with Luke, but not in the way that I would like. When all three Spider-Men are going up against all these old villains, Tom Holland doesn't really have a great connection with them, but the other two Spider-Men do. Therefore, Tom Holland, since he has an emotional relationship with the other two of them, they can sort of be that connection for Tom Holland and the villains through them, if that makes any sense. But Kylo Ren and none of the other characters have a connection with Palpatine because he comes out of nowhere and there are no old characters to tie to him. Therefore, Rey has no connection with Palpatine, so the battle feels very empty, right? There's really nothing for us emotionally to latch onto, and it rings very hollow. So the overall lesson here is you have to have a logical explanation for why your villain is returning, and you have to have him emotionally connected to your main character. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content on the channel, and also leave a comment down below. Hope to see you next time I publish a video.